Hello and welcome to The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine that explores just what it is that draws people to this crazy and infuriating game. My name's Rod Murray and I'm your host on this monthly journey where we meet golfers both famous and not to find out just what for them is the thing about golf. If you're new to the podcast, make sure to check out the archives. This is episode 6. But on previous editions, we've chatted with Bob and Kathy Shearer, Barnbougle Dunes owner Richard Sattler, and golf course architecture publisher Paul Daly, among others. All of those have been fascinating interviews, and I must take this opportunity to thank those who've been in touch over the past couple of months to say nice things about the show. If you want to be sure never to miss an episode, simply subscribe in your preferred podcast app. That, of course, is free. And also make sure to follow us on Twitter at @ThingGolf for updates about everything to do with the show. I mentioned that there'd already been some nice feedback, and I'm hoping we'll get more positive responses to this month's guest, who might be our highest profile so far, and is certainly one that I was keen to sit down with. It's not every day you get to chat with a two-time Australian Open winner, particularly one with a terrific sense of humour, a knack for telling stories, and a down-to-earth approach that one doesn't always encounter in the top echelons of the golf world. It's no surprise that Peter Lonard is one of this nation's favourite players, equally popular among peers and fans alike. He's never had the prettiest golf swing, though it's certainly devastatingly effective, and he's never been the longest hitter or the best putter. But perhaps what draws people to Lonard is his grit, application to the task, and laid-back attitude. Having sat with him for this lengthy exchange, I can confirm personally that all of these attributes are genuine, and even if he wasn't a world-class player, the truth is Peter Lonard would still be a world-class bloke. So sit back and enjoy what I think is a fascinating chat with one of our best, Peter Lonard. Well, Pete Lonard, first things first, thank you for taking some time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Podcast's called The Thing About Golf. It's probably a moving target for a pro who's been at it as long as you have, but at this end of your career, this moment in time, what's the thing about golf for Pete Lonard?
Well, I don't think the actual playing of the game for my life is any different. I still play because I enjoy having to play different courses at different moments, and even though the good days are gone professionally, you still get that feeling having to hit that one shot at the right time, say to win a Pro-Am or to even take $40 off your mates. You still had that feeling. 30, 40 years on, playing golf is still the enjoyment of having to hit a certain shot at the right time and actually doing it. And there's no guarantee in golf that you'll ever do it. You'll do it all the time, but that one or two moments per year or per month or whatever, where you have to hit that shot and you hit it, it's a great feeling, and it just keeps you motivated or keeps you interested in it anyway.
We're sitting here on a Wednesday and you've just played in the comp at the Lakes. I imagine not with a bunch of other touring pros. As you would well know, a lot of your contemporaries and blokes who do what you do for a living would think that was as much fun as extracting their own teeth with a pair of pliers and no anaesthetic.
I don't know. I've been a member here. I probably joined the Lakes in 2000, maybe 2001, and for the most part of it, I just put my name down on the Saturday comp, the Wednesday comp. The last probably year or so, I played with pretty much the same guys, but up until then, I'd see a gap, put my name down, and off we go. And
what a thrill for the members, Pete, I imagine. You must have had some great reactions over the years.
I don't know.
I know you don't think of that
they might not like it
yourself, but
I don't know. I do. I did play with a guy last week, and he said, you've been doing this for a long time. I said, yeah. He said, you just play normally in the comp with different blokes? I said, yeah. He said, I played with an old bloke about a year ago, and he said, I came down for a social game, and Pete, he goes, I like Peter, but that was just too hard for me. It was too much pressure. He goes, I hated it. So I suppose it depends on the individual whether they like it or not. But it's good. Like all clubs, wide array of people. You meet all sorts. You meet 30 handicappers that have no problem giving you a lesson whilst you're walking around the course, or or what you did wrong, 10 years ago or whatever it was. But it's It's all sorts. Good fun. I love playing golf. I think probably like now I'm a member here and at the Aussie, so at the Australian I probably play on Saturdays more often, and then play here on the Wednesdays. So and the rest of the time I just do a bit of practice and hang around.
There's a lot of stuff about golf that's unique. That might be the most unique, might it not? I can't think of another sport where a top world-class player can lob up with a bunch of amateurs.
Yeah, that's the greatest part of golf. Like I can play with a mate who's off 20-odd handicap, and we can still come down the last having a bet over, lunch or a drink or whatever it is, and he can beat me and still have and get as much satisfaction out of it as playing against someone of your own ability. So I think that's the beauty of golf. I think it's often lost because I think you're right. There's just no other sport that you can actually play someone that's not of your same ability.
Yeah, well, you and I aren't playing Roger Federer, and if we do, it's not going to be much fun for him or for us.
That'd be a short game.
The game's changed at the top level a lot. I'm just listening to you think about that there. Is it a bigger business than it used to be? Do we see less guys who go out and play the World's Tours, the players that we see on the PGA Tour, the European Tour, who maybe have less of an attitude like yours and I suspect a lot of guys our generation and prior? It's become just business for some.
I definitely think there's some guy, like even when I first started, there'd be the odd US pro that would say, I don't really enjoy playing golf, but I do it for the finances.
There's a lot of money in it.
But there's a lot of money in it. But, now I look at the senior tour, those blokes are still playing and they've got more money than they need. So,
that's right.
Maybe they do like the golf a bit. But I don't know whether it's definitely big business. America's big business. It's definitely changed.
15 million. One tournament last week. McIlroy, 15 million.
Just like incredible dollars. I can remember when the FedEx Cup came up first. I think first prize was 10 million. On your superannuation.
It was a deferred thing, that's right.
Yes, and all the good players got a little upset because, you can't expect us to play for that. So now it goes straight in their pocket, apparently. But it's one of those weird things. How much money is enough? I think the landscape's definitely changed, particularly in world golf, particularly America and Europe, like they never end. I think in the old days, most of the tours, US Tour and the PGA Tour and the European Tour used to usually start about March, April, finish September, which left a nice window for tournament countries like Australia or South Africa or even a bit in Asia. Yep. Left a nice window for them to operate. And if the good players wanted to play, which at the end of the day I think most of them like playing, they had to travel, which was good for golf all around the world, I think. But now the fact they're massive machines and they go from the first week in January to the second week in November, it's really put the squeeze on Australia, probably South Africa and, the other guys as well.
We just had the off-season. It was a week.
Yes, exactly. And they're back on. Back on again.
Back to work.
Yes, so it's a never-ending. It's just a big circle that just keeps going round and round.
I suppose it's a good thing. It says there's a lot of interest in golf, but as you say, it's not necessarily a good thing for everybody. This will come out around the time of the Australian Open. We'll talk about the Australian Open and its importance to you a bit later. But we feel the effects of that, particularly with an event like the Australian Open, don't we? Which should be more important in the world of golf than it is. But it's harder and harder for us to remain relevant even amongst our own top Australian players. What are your thoughts on some of that? It's been controversial the last couple of years, obviously.
Yeah, well, as an Australian, if you're a good player, I can't see any reason why you can't do 3 weeks in a row. Like, to me, 3 weeks in the whole scheme of things is no big deal. But maybe I'm old-fashioned, I don't know. But to me, it was always, I'd play everywhere, not being able to wait to get back to play in Australia. But that feeling, whether it had the, what would you call it, the world recognition was never an issue to me because I'm Australian, so I don't think it should matter. But the problem, I think probably the main reason now is that, which really hurts Australian golf quite considerably, is the tours go for longer. The young guys that are playing or just starting out, particularly trying to get overseas, those tournaments, that's when they have their tour schools, which is when our tournaments are on. So I think it's a progression of everything. So, the kids, like I grew up playing golf, and my first thing was playing Pro-Ams, and then the next step was getting out of the Pro-Ams, playing the Australian or the Vic Opens or the smaller Opens, and then, the pinnacle was playing the Australian Open and the Masters and the PGA. Early doors, there was Palm Meadows and things like that, like specialist tournaments, like hung around for 2 or 3 years and left. But that was the pinnacle for me. And then once you got through that, then you'd go overseas. But you could always seem to manage playing them, going to the tour schools, and then getting your card and moving on. So you always had an affiliation with those tournaments. Now it seems like the really gifted young kids, unless they're unbelievably good, seem to get caught in that no man's land where they have to play qualifyings for I think Europe and America both now have 2 or 3 qualifyings. Then they have, in America, you only qualify for the web.com, or I don't think it's called even web.
Corn Ferry Tour.
Corn Ferry Tour. And then you've got to play a full year there and then move on. And they get caught in this cycle where they almost can't play in Australia. If they can play in one, but then 2 days later they have to be in America to do something else. So it's sort of...
And if you're serious about getting to America, that's not helping your chances, is it? Getting on a plane straight after the Australian Open and teeing it up 2 days later. It's just...
Yes. So there's a lot of things timing-wise it's not doing Australia any favours with that sort of stuff. And I think because they're so used to just fighting to get onto the tours, that 3 weeks sort of gets blurred from the time they start, and then all of a sudden they get their card and then they don't have that affiliation or the great memories of playing there and moving up the ladder. So
it begs the question, I suppose, Peter. I wonder which does the more damage in that sense. The young players never developing their relationship with the Australian Open, or the big stars, our own big stars, not coming back to play it. Both, I suppose, don't help the tournament in their own way.
Well, it definitely plays a role. I think the good players inspire the youngers, the younger guys, and if the younger guys coming through now see that the big guys don't play, well, they'll start acting the same, won't they? Yeah. Like it was almost unheard of in the years when I first started, for Grady or Finchy or any of the guys not to play every tournament pretty much in Australia. And obviously, like we said, it was easier to do that then.
It's different too. I mean,
it's different.
Nobody in this day and age is making the sort of money that they were. Or they weren't making the sort of money.
Yes.
I mean, Jason Day is his own empire. Adam Scott is his own business empire.
Yes.
Well, his decisions aren't all his own, and there's a reality to that we need to...
Yes.
It just does seem a shame, doesn't it, when you've grown up with the Australian Open being that event, and it just seems to be losing a bit of that lustre.
Yes, just with the home players, and also I think years ago, I may be incorrect on this, but I reckon they, guys like Nicholas, Player, maybe Palmer even, it was actually in their contracts that they had to play certain tournaments around the world per year, and this was being part of their deal.
They all had a club deal, I think, and they had to play the clubs that were for sale here when they got here, and they got a cut ongoing. We were just talking about yesterday.
Oh, really?
Actually,
okay, yeah.
And that was the deal. So rather than an appearance fee, $1 million to play this week and then you go home, it was, right, you get 30% of Slazenger sales for the next 12 months, but you've got to tee it up in the Australian Open and you've got to use the Slazenger clubs that we're selling. So that was, it's all changed, hasn't it?
Yes, so that's not, that just doesn't happen. So it doesn't actually really help you with getting the big boys over to play. Can you give them enough money?
No.
You just can't do it, can you?
Look, Rory won $15 million the other week. What could you possibly offer him if he didn't want to come to Australia that would make it worth his while?
Yes.
What can't you can't
financially? You just can't do it.
You can't do it. And it becomes irresponsible. No human's worth that sort of.
Yes, I do.
Maybe Tiger, but
I do remember when I was on the PGA Tour, probably 01 to probably 09 or something, and you played a lot of golf. You played for a hell of a lot of money. Sponsorship money was off the charts compared to anything I'd ever seen anywhere else. And they would have Pro-Ams and offer you a very good sum for a day's golf after a tournament. And a lot of the tournaments, they couldn't fill the field, couldn't get enough players to play in them because of the money. But the one thing that they did that you could never get a start in was the first tournament of the year. They used to play the Sony in Hawaii, and they had a Monday Pro-Am. And guys hadn't played for, not that long, but maybe a month or so. But they used to have this Monday Pro-Am, and instead of money, they used to give you something that wasn't out yet. Oh. So the prototype to a Game Boy or whatever, I don't do those things, whatever those sort of things, and that you couldn't buy.
Right.
Couldn't get a start.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like guys, you'd see guys come and play a $30,000 Pro-Am. Oh, no, sorry, I've got to go home and rearrange my sock drawer. And then all of a sudden you've got a PlayStation on, $500 PlayStation that you can't get out, can't buy. All of a sudden you can't get a start in it. So
PlayStations keep kids quiet.
Yes.
$30,000 Pro-Ams don't.
Probably don't. But, so I think you've got to give them... For the overseas player, I think Australia's got to sell the opportunity or something that you can't buy. So you've got to sell Australia rather than
the tournament,
the money.
Itself,
the money itself means nothing to them. And I'm sure if you spoke to every guy on the US tour, bar probably 2 or 3, have you ever been to Australia? A lot of them would say no. Would you like to go to Australia? I'd love to go to Australia. So I'm sure there's a way to do it, but it's got to be on things that they can't buy or they don't know. Yeah. So
let's not bog down in that. It's not the ugly side of golf, but it's less fun than some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
I guess the ultimate thing to say about that is money isn't always the best solution for everything. It creates as many problems as it solves.
Yes,
it would seem
I think there was definitely a sweet spot there for a while, and now the sweet spot's getting further and further apart.
Were you born too early? If you were 20 years younger?
Or maybe I wouldn't be any good. I don't know. I did hear one of the kids, or one of the old blokes, about a year ago, he was talking to one of the other guys, and he'd be about my age, probably 51. Anyway, they said, we were just born in the wrong era. I was like, you can't be serious, can you? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you got on tour with the year that Tiger started.
Yeah.
That's when the gravy train really started to kick along. It was like, I said, don't worry about what they're making now, but Tiger was he was the capitalist for it all moving, pretty quickly. So I think I've been pretty lucky. Right time.
Yeah. Wasn't all smooth sailing for you, of course, Pete.
No.
We all know the story of the Ross River Fever and all those sorts of things. I was having a poke around. I didn't realise, I'm sure many don't. You did 2 years in Europe prior to the Ross River Fever. I always sort of thought you were in a PGA Tour of Australia player. 2 pretty ordinary years. It has to be said. I found some old photos of you too at that time. They're a very different shape to what you are now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing the Ross River had something to do with that. But what do you remember about those first 2 years there? I think your best result was a tied 10th in one event over 2 years. And how important perhaps were those years later when you went back and you had a lot more success, obviously?
Well, I think, I played no golf as a kid. I didn't play any amateur events, I played soccer and a lot of cricket and rugby league and all that sort of stuff. So I had no real background in golf. So everything I learned was as a trainee, or all of a sudden I got out on tour and played Pro-Ams, and so it was a progression every time I got to another level.
Steep learning curve too, I would think.
Yeah, it was different. Like I was sporty, so it wasn't. I didn't find it impossible. I think the first year I became a trainee, I think, I remember I played the Australian Trainee Championship and I played with a guy called Ken Trimble. Mm-hmm. And I think I did all right in that one, but I after playing with him that day, I realised I wasn't very good. I was hopeless. Uh-huh. So I thought, how am I going to fix this? I got to find a coach. I got to get all my ducks in order and go from there. So I was lucky enough to find a coach. Well, I went to Gary Edwin. He was down in Canberra in those days. And
so right from the get-go, Gary was your...
Yeah, that was my second year as a trainee. I went to see him. I knew I wasn't very good, but I thought I swung it okay and all that sort of stuff. And as I found out pretty quickly, I wasn't very... my swing was horrendous. And,
doesn't pull any punches, does he, Gary?
No, and I liked him because at that stage, because he used video, and through cricket I did most of my training on video. Okay. So that made sense to me. I could see what they were talking about. And so that next second year made great strides as far as as far as ball striking and all that sort of concerned. But then once I finished my traineeship, then it was just to go play Pro-Ams, did all right there. I was never a great Pro-Am player, but when I played 4 rounders, I felt far more comfortable because I'd have a practice round. I'd set it up. I was pretty good at, manoeuvring my way around the course and working out how to play it. And from the time I'd seen Gary and I realised the harder I practiced, the better I got. So I was a massive practicer. Yeah. Once I finally got into the position to go to Europe, I figured, well, I'll go to the tour school. So I ended up getting my card. It wasn't like today where you look it up on the internet and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do there.
Here and here and here and here.
I'll get a bed sit and I just basically got my card. What do I do? Oh, well, the first tournament's in Mallorca in May or March or whatever it was. So there was no internet. So there was no... it was just I just
get to Mallorca and find somewhere to stay.
Yeah, exactly. So I just ended up going to... I went down to the bank and swapped $20,000 for pounds and got 8,000 quid. And I thought...
Hang on a minute.
What the hell's going on here? And then... I just got on a plane and turned up in London, and the first 3 days I'd spent £800, £900, and I'm going, wow, I'm in big trouble here. I'm not going to last very long. And I was lucky. I think Wayne Riley actually took me under his wing a bit and said, you got to find somewhere to stay where you can leave your clubs and leave some stuff and blah blah blah. So we ended up getting a bed sit and need a car, and so I did that. Looking back at it, I think I had no idea what I was doing. I just turned up and off I went. And I ended up getting a bed sit. I bought a larder for 500 quid.
You've done it all.
And then off I went. Went to Mallorca. I think the worst thing was I played okay the first few weeks.
Uh-huh.
And then I slowly got worse. But I had there was nowhere to practice. So I had no backup for keeping my game in order, whereas playing through Australia all through those years, I always had Oatlands to go back and practice. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was a big practicer, so I'd spend every day, I'd either practice or go to the gym. And I'd practice all day, go to the gym at night. Then I'd go to the Parramatta driving range at night, which I don't even think's there anymore.
Probably not.
And then, so to Europe, I really struggled. I just...
Did you learn, though? Do you think you learnt things there that still hold you in good stead now?
I think it made me a bit tougher. The initial thing was in Europe, I hated it because, like, all the older pros treated you like crap, right, basically. Mm-hmm. But what I worked out over the years was there's such a high attrition of guys that come in and don't and are gone the next year and they never see them again. So until you're there for a while,
don't get attached.
This don't get attached. Yes,
you might like this Lonard kid that he'll be gone. That'll be no good.
Yes. So I learnt that later on, but the first couple of years I found pretty difficult. Just away from home, there was you didn't have phones or
Skype or any of that stuff.
Yeah, you'd go down the road and you'd be in a little red phone booth slotting £1 coins in there to say good day to your mum and dad. Or
Clate's telling me if you wanted the footy results, you went to the Australian Embassy on Tuesday and you'd get the Melbourne paper would have arrived by then in London, and then you'd be able to see who won the footy on Sunday and Saturday.
Yeah, so it was like such a different thing. And at the actual second year, I actually could have got my card, but I didn't think I was going to get a start. And so I came home 7 weeks early, and as it turned out, I got 6 starts. So, and then I think I missed my card by £100 maybe.
Lesson learned.
Something like so. But so that was a lesson learned. Maybe I was homesick. Looking back at it, I don't know. But then
you might have missed 7. You might have missed all 6 starts. Who knows?
Yes, you just
and spent $4,000 doing
right.
it. Is the other side.
So managing your finances and that. But I think looking back at it, the worst thing I was never prepared. I never had anywhere to practice and somewhere where I could just go. I had a place to go and stay, but I didn't. It's important to have somewhere to stay, but it's also important to have somewhere where you can just go and practice.
For a practicer, if that's what you do,
yes,
then you can't sort of live without it. I'm intrigued. You said that. No, sorry. Just to go back, you said Gary Adwin was pretty blunt about you. At least you didn't have the Nick Ahern experience, who went for his first lesson. I think it was Neil Smith, his coach, and the first question he asked him after he hit a few balls, "Did you say you're a pro?" That was his introduction to his coach. Okay. Did you say you're a pro?
No. Well, I didn't quite get that, but I did have my Jack Nicklaus pants on, so maybe that was it.
How'd you end up in golf? We're here now, all these years later, but for a kid who didn't play golf at all, how did they start? It's an incredible journey it's taken you on, in hindsight, I suppose, if it wasn't part of your life before.
Yeah, well, it was probably... I reckon I was about 12, and we used to go up the entrance. My grandparents lived at the entrance up at Tuggerah Lakes, and my father... used to come. We go up there probably 3 or 4 weeks over summer, and one day I wasn't very hot and all that, and Dad just said, "Oh," and I was sporty, so anything to do with sport, I wanted to have a go.
Yep.
And he used to play once a year with my uncle. My uncle was a golfer.
Okay.
So he said, well, maybe we should go for a game of golf, but you can't take it up as a sport. That's exactly what he said. I said, why? He said, well, golf's for old people and rich people. And he goes, you're not old and we've got no money, so don't ever think you're going to be a golfer. So I said, all right. So anyway, off we chuffed. We played 9 holes at Tuggerah Lakes Golf Club, and I loved it. I liked it. I thought it was
straight away. You
good
were
fun.
one that straight away were taken by it?
I wasn't totally hooked, but I enjoyed playing golf. And anyway, so we came back, and over the next year or two, I'd play soccer in the morning or rugby league in the morning, depending upon what year it was. And then same with cricket, we'd play in the mornings, and then Saturday afternoon, Dad dropped me off at North Ryde Golf Club, and I'd just join this group and go and play 18 holes. Perfect child minding, I suppose, you know.
It's handy, yeah.
Yeah, give me a couple of bucks and give me a Coke and a packet of chips, and I'll go playing golf all afternoon. So that's how it sort of started.
A bit like the first member of the family to go to uni. You're the first one to
start playing golf. Yeah, exactly.
That image of golf as a rich person's pursuit, we still struggle against that today, don't we? It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not the reality, is it? As you would have found fairly quickly once you started playing.
Not compared to the rest of the world.
Oh, here it's definitely
like
not. No.
This is but it's like in the end I became a cadet member at Oatlands Golf Club. One of the guys that I played soccer with, his family played golf and said, there's this thing at Oatlands. So that's how I started there. So we play every second Sunday on early in the morning before the comp or something. There'd be like a group of cadets, and we go out and play 9 holes, and I'd just hang around. And anyway, I played probably once a week from then on, without being a member anywhere, pretty much till I was about 16. And then, it's going to sound ridiculous, but there was I reckon there was a TV show about Greg Norman on. It was about the time when he really played well, like out of his skin, and with majors and all that sort of stuff. And they had a couple of like hour episodes on just Greg Norman. And I was sitting there one day and I said, I'm going to be a golf pro. So I walked in to my father and said, I don't know whether I need to do the HSC. I'm going to be a golf pro. And which was over my dead body was his reply, you're going to join the bank or join the insurance companies. I think it was the bank in those days. Dad worked in insurance for 50 odd years for the same company. So he was pretty set in his way. You're going to get an education, and I think my mum realised I wasn't that smart, so probably not the best option. But anyway, so that was it.
How many careers do you reckon he launched, Norman? Seriously,
in my vintage,
Ogilvy, Scott,
a lot.
Legitimately, people looked and said, "That's what I
want to do."
And these are the only guys we know about who went on to turn pro and have a good career and become known. How many thousands of people play golf because of him?
I think
it's extraordinary.
It was extraordinary. The public interest from people that don't play golf. That's when I think you see it at who's the best, and Norman had that. Tiger has that.
Yeah. What is it? You've played with them both. You know them both, no doubt. What is it? What do they got? Do they like it when you're just sitting here? Can you feel it when you're just talking to them in the clubhouse?
Just normal guy. Like I've probably spoken to Tiger more than I've spoken to Greg, but just normal people. But there was something about him on the golf course. Like Tiger, like they were both very explosive golfers, and they were both very
exciting,
really good to watch. They
At
made
any
a lot
moment,
of birdies.
something can happen.
Something can happen. They're going to take on danger rather than some guys. Like in my case, I probably play a little on the safe side. Mm-hmm. They never seem to play on the safe side. So I also think it was bigger in those days because if you wanted to see them, you had to go and see them. Absolutely. Now with the advent of Foxtel and all this sort of stuff, you don't have to go to see the greats. Whereas I think in those days, like that 1 hour episode that I watched, that was the only time I'd ever seen him. Unless later on I went to a golf tournament and saw him play, and there were so many people that you couldn't see anything anyway, really. But I think that was the key. So so anyway, so then I gave up footy and gave up a few things and said I'm going to practice golf, and off we went. And did your dad ever come to terms with that? I'm sure later in life he must have done, but did he come to terms with the notion of you being a golfer? Kind of. After I had the Ross River, I had a funny thing. I ended up. I came back. I didn't play very well, and I had a few problems with my eyes and bits and pieces, which I didn't know until I met certain people along the way that said, "Look, can I help you? Mm-hmm. Can I have a look?" Anyway, so when they fixed my eyes, or my eyes got better, I started to play better immediately, mm-hmm. and I got an invite to the Singapore Open and a tournament in America on the PGA Tour called Castle Pines.
Yep. The Stableford event. Up in the mountains.
Up in the mountains.
You did it 400 yards up there, couldn't you? Yes. Fantastic stuff.
So anyway, so I was a club pro at that stage. Anyway, I was like, got to find my passport. So, I'm looking everywhere. I can't find my passport. So I said to my dad, you seen my passport? He said, oh, yeah. I said, where is it? He said, oh, it's gone. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, he said, you don't play on tour anymore. So what do you? I said, yeah, but where's it? Do you know where my passport is? He said, yeah, I threw it out. I said, why? He goes, well, you're not a golf pro. You're not going to travel. You've got a job now. There's no need to leave Australia. I binned it. Right. So I had to go up to Eastwood Police Station and tell the sergeant, when he said, where's your passport gone? And I said, my father threw it out. Yeah, I had one of those moments where he's sort of looking over his glasses. So you're telling me your father threw your passport? I say, yeah, that's exactly what happened. But
just after the dog ate the homework.
Yeah, so I think, he was, through my time when I first started, he was incredibly supportive. Mm-hmm. And I did actually say to him years later, when did it change? And when did you say, okay, I'm going to support him? He goes, he said, one day, he said, I find it hard to believe that you put such a nice sentence together, but you said, if I don't do this and give it 100%, I'll always feel like I missed something.
I left something out there.
And he said, that's when I thought,
serious.
I'll support you a bit and we'll see how you go. So,
do you remember that? Do you remember saying that?
I can't remember saying that. I can remember the passport thing like it was yesterday, but the actual I can't imagine I said something that
eloquent
that made such sense either. But he swears that was the turning point, and so and I was pretty good at mapping a course to get the most out of it, and I sort of really stuck to it. I'm pretty stubborn sort of person. So so I think in the end he accepted it. But I don't think it's what he envisaged my life to be.
Did he ever think, even after all of his success, that it was a real job? Or was there somewhere deep down did he think to himself, you can't play golf for a living, that's not a proper job?
I don't know. I think he was very proud that, I managed to make something out of something that I'm sure he didn't, I was off a 4 handicap when I walked in and said, I'm going to be a golf pro. So even when I look back at it now, I think
if some kid said that to you, you'd be
come on, mate, you can't be serious, can you? Yeah. So, I'm sure he was proud of that, or managed me staying alive, or still doing it, 30 years later. But I don't think he considers it.
It's not a real job.
It's not a real job. Yes, he's just lucky. Yeah,
it's hard work.
Lucky to be involved in that. Yes, so
indeed. I know the Americans have done it, but relationships with dads are funny things, aren't they? What was yours? What's yours been like with your dad?
Incredible. He's like I said,
as you get to this time in life, I think you start to think about those. You don't think about them your whole life.
Yes.
My dad passed 7 years ago, and you start to think about it in the last 5 or 6 years of his life. I started to think, and these days I think more about my relationship with him than I ever did.
Yep.
At the time, and I think that's an age thing, and you reflect on that stuff.
Yes, you reflect back. Dad's 93 now, and he's got dementia, so he's still going. But
awful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. But even 2 or 3 years ago, I'd come in and he'd go, "Well, how's your training going?" And I think in his scheme of things, and I suppose all parents have their ideas of what their kids are going to do. I think he thought I was going to
grow up one day,
have a normal job, Monday to Friday, play cricket or even play for the Bulldogs, Canterbury.
Right.
So he's a big Canterbury fan.
As are you, I think.
As I am, yes. I had no choice. Otherwise, I would have been. That's the only.
So you move out.
That was a no.
No negotiation.
No negotiation in that family, a part of the family. But so even 2 years ago, he said, "How's your training going?" I said, "Oh, well, I don't really train that much, and oh, well, how are you playing? I said, well, I play all right, I suppose. He goes, I said, what do you think I do? He said, oh, you play for the Bulldogs. I went, oh, no, I'm a golf pro. The look of disappointment on his face was unbelievable. But, so I think over the years, you're right, I don't think he ever thought it was a real job, as probably most people of
generation
that
of people
generation
who couldn't possibly
will go,
think
you can't be serious.
No,
yes.
That's right. That's
like even now, even now I play some pro-ams and I often get, what do you do for a living? Or,
yeah,
well,
golf.
Well, I play golf. How do you survive? That sort of stuff. So, it's not far from the truth, probably.
He probably still thinks to himself, if only you'd devoted yourself to the bank or the insurance, look where you could be now with the energy you've put into golf. You put into a proper job, you could be really quite successful.
That probably is right. I actually don't think he ever really
thought you'd grow out of it.
Thought
probably.
Much about how much work you do put into it. No. So, like when I came back after my mother died, I came back just to spend time with Dad and I lived with him, and I'd be getting up at 5:30 and I'd leave. I'd come home at 7 o'clock. I'd be here practicing all day. And it was in 2010 when I thought I can overcome my back issues and do all this sort of stuff. So I was, and he'd be going, well, where have you been all day? I go, I'm practicing. Oh, yeah, but what have you been doing? I go, well, I've been practicing. And even in those days when the dementia was just starting to kick in, he'd still go, geez, you practice a lot, don't you? I go, yeah. He goes, how long have you been doing this for? I was like, 30 years, 20 odd years.
It's the job, Dad.
He goes, oh, right. So, so it's one of those things.
Yeah. I'm sure he's proud of you. No
yes, I'm sure he's proud of it. But as far as thinking it's a job, I'm not.
One day you'll grow out of it and you'll get a proper job perhaps, and that'll be nice. Speaking of practice, I think a lot of people probably don't realize this. Run us through quickly what's a day in the life of a tour pro, because everybody thinks you play 15, 16 weeks a year. How hard could it be? You turn up on Thursday, you finish on Sunday, you get a great big check, you might do it the next week again. What's the reality of practice for a tour pro?
Well, on the PGA, like when I was a trainee, I was at dawn till dusk. I'd probably work about 30 hours a week, I think it was, and then the rest of the time was all just practice. That was when I finally twigged practicing.
That's how you get better.
Yeah, that's how you get better. I got a coach and had things to work on. It wasn't aimless practice, and then I'd go to the gym at night, and then I'd go, like I said, driving range at night, and then I'd come home, and if I wasn't putting any good, I'd often go to Hoadlands Golf Club and shine the car lights on the putting green and putt, get home at 10 o'clock and do it again. So
you had it bad, didn't you?
Yeah. I was just a worker, and that was the way it was. Once you start travelling and playing, practice becomes a little different. If I was at home in Orlando, like through England, I didn't really have anywhere to practice, so I'd go and get a few balls every now and then and just try and keep playing. America, it was an incredible. My whole life really changed once I went to America. I bought a house on a golf course, bought my golf cart, joined the club, get up in the morning, drive down. I chip for a couple of hours, on these big greens. There's no
one else there.
No one else there. You go to the pro shop. Yeah. Oh, how you going? Oh, very busy today, Mr. Lonard. Oh, how many players you got? Oh, 32. That sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, my pro shop used to run.
I was going to say, you've been a club pro.
250, 300 a day every Saturday and Wednesdays and things like that. So, it was just an incredible experience. So, on my weeks off, I'd train 5 days a week. So that's 5 hours of training.
That's for
gym
fitness,
work and gym work.
Yep,
stuff like that. I actually I ended up with a gym in my house. Practice wise, Orlando. I lived in Orlando. Orlando gets pretty hot, so I used to do 4 1-hour sessions, and not really counting the morning chip and putt, and then I'd usually play 9 holes at night in a cart. If there's no you could shoot a gun and never hit anybody on that golf course. There was never anybody there. So
that's not real, is it? Is that a real life? That's not real life, is it? That's a surreal existence.
That was my real life there, and it was really good. It was
Pinch
incredible
yourself from
job.
time to time. Because you'd done a real job and had a real life, so you would have appreciated perhaps
very different
more than some
from
others.
Real life. You do become very secluded from reality, I suppose, because you just do what you want to do. You know, if someone's trying to get you to do something you don't want to do, you just broke them.
That's right.
See you later. So, you know, it was an incredible lifestyle. It was like that for probably 10 years. And it's a lifestyle that there's not many places in Australia you can really get. Maybe Sanctuary Cove, maybe, something like that, but definitely nowhere in Sydney that you can
We
do
don't
that.
do the gated community and those sorts of things they do in America so much here, do we? Which is...
That's right. Which
I've got to say I quite like that. I wouldn't like to see Australia go that way necessarily, but who knows what will happen in the
Well, when I first moved there, I was living in England at the time, and I said to Paul Gow, I said, where do you live? He said, I live in Orlando in Florida. I was like, oh, that's where all the, you know, Norman and that lives. And he said, oh, not anymore. They've all moved to Jupiter and all this sort of stuff. So I said, is it any good? And yeah. And I said, any good? He said, oh, yeah, good. So anyway, I'd been playing there for about 8 weeks. And originally I was just going to play a little bit and go back to England and play in Europe. But I just got on a bit of a roll and it kept going. And so I thought, I'll buy a house here. So I said, right. So I went to Orlando and I phoned up the first real estate agent that I could find in the book, and I said, "Hi, I'm looking for a gated community." And she said, "Oh, we don't have them." I said, "Oh, no, I'm sure you have a gated community." She said, "No, I've never heard of them." So anyway, I'm going, "Oh, no, I'm sure I've been to places. They're everywhere. Everywhere you drive past, yeah, there's gated communities everywhere." She goes, "Sir, I've never heard of such a thing." And I'm going, I said, "A gated community, you know, with the big gate at the front that opens and shuts and you have control." And she goes, "Oh, gated community. I thought you were saying gay community." So that was my first start in America. I was like, no, gated community. So that was my first. So every time somebody says gated community, I think of that. But once I got into the lifestyle, it was just incredible. Yeah. Incredible place.
When you look back now, do you think about that much? Because it's a very different life you have here to that.
I don't look back at it. I have lots of different memories about playing and certain things that are just off the charts as far as doors that open just because you played golf. It was like looking back at those sort of things like President's Cups and...
PGA Tour, I mean, you're royalty in lots of places in America, aren't you, if you play the PGA Tour?
Yes. You're treated differently because you're a PGA Tour member. And when people introduce you, like if I introduced one of my friends, I'd say, "Oh, this is Joe," and that's where it ends. Whereas in America, they will say, "This is Joe. He played on the PGA Tour. This is Peter. He plays on the PGA Tour. He's a doctor." That's the way they do it. So, it definitely gives you credibility, I suppose. I don't know whether.
It's a little bit of celebrity. It's a little bit of
everything.
Open mouth. Wow, those guys are amazing. I play golf. I know how good that you have to be to do it. There's a lot of stuff wrapped up in it.
Yes.
That's a long way from the western suburbs of Sydney for a kid who grew up playing soccer and rugby league, isn't it?
Yes. It was like America just blows you away. It was like just that much bigger for everything. I think when I first got my card, I think the first year I got offered more money to use a golf ball, which I was already using, than I'd made aggregate in my entire life in sponsorship. It was just a totally different...
You hear that stuff, I think you get desensitised, but that is just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
If someone came to me and said, "I'll give you everything you've made in the last 10 years just to do what you've been doing anyway for the next 12 months, I don't know what I'd say.
Yes. I was like, really? I was like...
Okay.
Yeah. And there was a different... Even the spectators at the golf wanted you to earn more money. There was never a... Like over the years, there was quite a few times when people would say, "Oh, listen, sorry, you're only playing for $5 million this week. We've dropped the ball. We'll get the prize money up further down the track," and things like that. So it's a very different feeling. It was a very different world. Yeah. Very different.
If you'd thought about it, do you think you would have been comfortable there? I feel like you kind of rolled into it as part of your career and your golf, and you ended up in America, and that's where you were, and you were making the money, and you could live on the course, and you played the PGA Tour. I wonder whether if you'd thought about it, whether it might have all felt a bit different and maybe odd. I'm not sure.
Well, I think, you're only any good at it if you're not thinking about it.
Maybe.
I don't think there's a fine line to be where, like, to be honest, I just thought that would never end. Like, you just...
This is where I am now.
Yeah, like, I went to the tour school just for the fun of it. I got my card, then I had to go to a school where they basically teach you how they generate the money and how they do things. And then, all of a sudden they say, we have a superannuation thing for the golfers. If you make 150 cuts or if you win a tournament, you're a fully vested member, then you can...
It's a pretty good deal too.
It's an incredible deal.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to go,
hang on a
gee,
minute.
this sounds all right, superannuation, because I always remembered my father. He was very careful with his money, and superannuation was one of those things that he was all over me about from the time I was like 20. You got to look after yourself for later in life and all that sort of stuff.
Because the figures are staggering. They're eye-opening even for the players themselves, I would imagine. I mean, the first time you wake up and look in your bank and see something with 6 or 3 zeros behind it must be Jesus.
Well, you don't have to touch. You don't even look at it. It's like, I actually forgotten it was there in the end. Like when I lost my card in 2009, I think it was. When I turned 45, I just started getting these checks sent to me, and I said, well, where are these coming from? And the bloke goes, this is your superannuation's kicked in. So wow. I was like, oh, really? How much do I have? And it was a nice bonus.
What keeps you motivated under those circumstances? Because for most of us, work is about, if you're lucky, you enjoy your work, but the truth of it is, if you don't get the check at the end of the week, you can't keep doing it. You're going to have to go and do something else. That's how most of us live. What keeps you motivated once money stops being an issue?
I think that just the desire to be good at what you do. I don't think...
Is that what separates?
I think that definitely separates some guys, definitely. I've never really thought about it in my case, but, guys like Tiger or guys that have won $100 million. And
why did he come back from that scandal? To put himself through all of that? Why would he? He didn't have to. He could have retired.
But I think mentally you're just... Or even from the day he started, like his first contract was $70 million. Right. 60-odd million, was it, or something?
And he didn't have 20 in his pocket to buy a pizza.
Yeah, and I'm thinking... How does he go to practice? How does he get up in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning and practice all day till dark when he's got that money?
For what? What's he doing it for?
Yeah, why? All of a sudden, money's just wiped off the
The figures are different, but that's you too, isn't it? Is it addictive? Are you hooked? Are you addicted to golf, or the competition, perhaps?
Well, I think to me now, that's my lifestyle. I've done it 30 years now, and it becomes not that it feels like a job, it becomes like a job where if I hate not doing something, and this is what I do. So for me to get up in the morning and go and practice all day is just the way life is, and I've done it forever, and habitual maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure it must
be a bit of everything,
habit,
and it fills in time. Yeah. Everybody who I know that's retired, the first thing they say is, "You're a long time retired." And,
well, there's two types. There's those, and then there's the people who say, "I don't know how I ever had time to work." They're the other type of retirees. They're the two types of people, I think.
Yes. So, like my father, he retired. He was retired for a year, and then went and got another job and worked until they said, "Listen, you can't work."
That's right. We're banning you.
Yeah. So it was like, I think I'm a bit like him. I want to.
Got to be doing something.
I've got to be doing something. I can't sit around. Like I don't.
Can you sit and watch a whole movie in one sitting? I can't.
I can watch a movie. Not to the stages of my cat. I've got a caddy, and he's been caddying for me for about 4 or 5 years now, and like he'll watch movies all day, every day. But I can't do that. I'll watch one movie and then I'm out.
So I've got to get up and go and walk. I've got to move.
Yes.
You've got to move. Yeah. Of course, Pete, one of the things that's happened for you in the last couple of years is your own child.
Yes, we had a little accident.
Changes life a bit, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, that's really changed the focus off practicing. There's actually been a couple of times here early on when I came up to the range to hit some golf balls, and I thought I might just go have a sleep in the locker room, which I've never had that feeling before. But yes, it's interesting. I've got to say, I take my hat off to any kids that have them while they're on tour. And like on the PGA Tour, it's a little different. You know, they all have nannies and
Yeah, but still, kids still cry, and they cry for you, and they don't want you to leave. And
but they're very time consuming and thing. It's been an interesting ride so far. She's like 22 months old, so nearly 2. So she's
Well, we're just getting to the fun part, I reckon.
yeah, she's stubborn as hell. So she's
Bit of you in her, you think?
she's me. Yeah, she's massively me.
You probably deserve that.
Yeah, there's going to be a payback. There's no doubt about it. It's a So we've, but she loves sports. You know, I take her to footy, Bulldogs games.
Is that a rule for her too? It's Bulldogs or you move out?
Bulldogs or nothing.
Yep.
Bulldogs or follow AFL, I suppose.
Or do something else, that's
something
right.
like that. But so far she's on board. She'll wear all the Bulldogs kit and won't take her eyes off the game and that sort of stuff.
What does change? I mean, golf becomes, I imagine, way down the list of thinking after, as work does for most people once you have a kid. What does sort of change? What changes about your own perspective, perhaps? And do you feel like work/golf for you now is a different thing? Do you approach it differently? Do you think about it differently? Is it true that double bogeys aren't as important anymore? Is it? You're just bristling at the mention of double bogeys. So maybe that hasn't changed.
I think I've had Yvonne at the time when I know my golf career is limited. So I've probably got at best 3 or 4 good years left. As long as I can keep my back going and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, part of me wants to play more.
Because the window's closing.
But it's a whole different world as far as I want to play. Obviously, the bigger money, particularly for seniors, is overseas. You know, can I do it with the family? Can I? Yeah, it's very.
There's a lot to consider.
There's a lot of things to consider. So, you know, it's been a bit of a messed up ball. You know, everyone's going, well, why don't you go play in America? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? But life's changed, hasn't it? So, I spend most of my time here. I can play a lot of the ones around Sydney or Australia, and you know.
Queensland and Melbourne, they're easy enough.
Throw them in the truck and we drive around. And, you know, like a couple of months ago, we went and played in Perth, played a couple of senior ones, then played a couple of flat belly ones. I actually trucked my truck over to Perth and we drove all the way up to Broome and Port Hedland. And
combine a holiday with it.
It was great fun. It was really good. It's still hard work, but, you know, it was good that we were all together. And
what's the truck, by the way? I was going to ask you.
Oh, it's just a 4-wheel drive. It's like a Colorado, I suppose.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Golf's probably the most selfish pursuit that I can imagine, particularly if you're going to be a touring professional. It's all about you and your game. Not in a bad way, but that it has to be successful. Parenthood is the complete opposite of that.
Yes. It's it's one of those ones where if you're going to play your best, you got to have all your.
It's a team effort, isn't it?
Everything's got to be together.
Parents,
and if they're not if they don't fall into line to make it right, you may as well not do it. So, you know, it's very for my wife who's never been involved. She's come after the serious golf, so it's definitely a progression of working out where we all sit in relation to the golf. And
because as a non-golfer, like all non-golfers, she wouldn't understand the 5 hours doing the gym work and the all day at the course and leave at 5:30 and come home at 7. In fact, as a non-golfer, she probably thinks it's the opposite of that.
Yes, well, most people think, well, you play
free.
golf, it doesn't
Monday to Wednesday, you're off,
but you've got to treat it like a job. It's just a job. Yeah. So you've got to get up and do all the work. So, you know, she's been very good so far. I'm joking. But over the next 3 or 4 years, there's like a Rubik's Cube trying to put everything together and keep everybody happy. And
because, of course, you've done the worst thing imaginable. When you have gone away and played, you've played really well. Second in the Senior Open in your first ever start. Third in the big PGA just a couple of weeks ago. When you've teed it up, you've taunted yourself by playing really well and having good finishes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Wouldn't it be easier if you were just missing cuts and shooting thousands? You could say, oh, look, I'm done.
Well, I think that's been my biggest problem over the time. I've never gone, even when I was injured, I never went so far off the map shooting 80s because then it'd be easy to go,
I'm done.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
But now I still shoot. I don't shoot the really low ones, but I still shoot under par pretty consistently. You know, and you only get so many windows to sneak into America or even to Europe. The the Senior Open probably was my best opportunity. And looking back at it, I probably really should have. I had a good chance of winning that. And
Ogilvy says there's could-haves and should-haves for tournament wins. So which one was that one, do you reckon? Was it a should-have or a could-have? There's a fine line there sometimes, isn't there?
Yes, it's right on the edge of both, I reckon. It's like, to win, you have to do something a little special, or you have to not make mistakes. And I made a couple of little mistakes and never really caught him. And then at the end, when it all finished, I missed a putt on the last, but my brain had turned off because I knew I had to win to get to the next level. But that sort of got the door ajar. But the timing was no good because Yvonne was just about to arrive, so I just had to come home and do that and then be around for the birth of Yvonne. So then this year was the same sort of thing. I was going to go play a fair few. Didn't really fit well with the family side of things. So, I said, well, I'll go and I'll qualify for the Senior Open, which I missed, which I just couldn't, which I was devastated about. And, all of a sudden I thought I'll go home. And I thought I'll stay for one more week and play. And of course I finished second. And then I'm thinking, well, geez, I'd love to stay a little bit longer because bits and pieces get you into Senior Opens and US Opens next year.
That's right. That's climbing the ladder again, aren't you? It's like when you first start out.
It's just opening the door. So, to let that go was pretty hard. I've got to say it was a bit of a long flight home. But now it's fine. I've had a really good run.
But you can't turn that off, can you? And if you could, you probably wouldn't be as successful as you have been.
Yes. I think the competitiveness is what drives you to keep playing and practicing and doing all the hard yards. Like I think in all sports they talk about the hard yards. When golf, the hard yards is, number one, doing all the practice and being regimented enough to do it consistently, because it's boring. It's like you can only hit so many golf shots, you can only hit so many putts, and to be doing it 30 years down the track, probably not with exactly the same vigour, but still doing it. It's what your competitive side. And then, of course, once you actually get into a tournament and things become serious, there's a feel. I think I'm a little numb to it compared to what I was years ago. I don't think I get as pumped up, or there's not as much as adrenaline as there used to be, but there's nothing better than that moment when you have to hit shots and do things that under a bit of pressure. Under
the pressure. I remember Tiger describing it once as when your eyeballs are sweating because there's so much pressure, that's when you know you're right. When your eyeballs are sweating.
Yes, well, I don't think I ever quite got to that one. But yes, where your hands are shaking and you're thinking, no, don't make a fool of yourself. Bits and pieces like that. So
I'd like to win a golf tournament, a proper golf tournament. I mean, we've all won a Wednesday comp, as 12 markers and all the rest of it. But to win a proper golf tournament against a field of proper golfers, world-class players, and you've done that. You did it in America, you've done it here in Australia multiple times. What is the feeling and what goes on that back nine and as the leaderboard changes and the cheers go up? And
it's different. It's different. If I look back at my career or when I played, I was actually more nervous. Like in all tournament golf, there's some guys that go way ahead after the first 2 days and then come back on the weekends. I was always the other guy that I didn't get into that content. I always tried to work out how to get in contention. I would shoot those really low scores Thursdays and Fridays, because once I got into contention, I felt really comfortable, and I felt I was always prepared to lose it trying to win it.
Uh-huh.
I had no problem doing that. I suppose ball striking wise was probably my best thing. So I felt that I had little chance of blowing it from hitting it poorly.
Uh-huh.
So maybe that had something to do with the way I thought.
Uh-huh.
So, every tournament that I ever had, every tournament that I won, something different happened. So the first one, which was probably my best one, was the 97 Masters.
I think we all remember that. What a special
Tiger was there, and it was just a really big week. Incredible. I played with Tiger on the Saturday.
There's some stories about that which we'll come to shortly. We'll get to the fun part of the interviews.
And I was just a club pro. So the thing was, I'd been playing tournaments. I'd finished second probably in a year and a half before that, probably 6 or 7 times, I reckon. So I was quite attuned to playing in front of people, but the actual pressure to win was very different in that tournament, which I'll never forget. It's like, little bits and pieces that I'll always remember from that tournament. But every moment's special. Sometimes you get in front and you've got to not make a mistake. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're chasing people. Sometimes there's always something that, and even in moments of my career that I look back and say that changed the whole direction of my career, there's always a little bit of luck in there somewhere. Just you get a bounce or something and it all holds together and it's like a game maker and then off you go, you keep going. So
you make a par that you shouldn't or you make a birdie.
Definitely.
Sometimes you save a bogey that could have been much worse and that's the difference. Before we come to the 97 Masters, which obviously was crucial and everything really happened after that, that of course came on the back of this Ross River fever.
Yep.
Most people know that you had it. What was it? We heard horror stories of you ballooned to 130 kilos, that you couldn't drive your car to the doctor without falling asleep at the lights, that you couldn't drive a manual car anymore because you didn't have the energy. Is there any truth in any of that? What is Ross River fever?
It wasn't a horror story. So the Ross River was basically gave me arthritis. That was the first symptoms that I had. Elbows and shoulders and.
How old were you at the time? You were only young.
I was 24.
Wow.
Yeah, I was super fit, really
athletic.
I'd actually gotten to the stage where I was training a lot, and it was funny enough. Before I went down with the Ross River, I actually I had a fitness test, and they'd actually said to me, your body fat is lower than a triathlete.
Right.
So you're too low.
Too low. You need
to. If you get sick or a virus, it's going to really knock you on your backside.
You won't be able to fight.
And of course, like in those days, same thing. No internet, none of that. So I'm thinking, well, surely the fitter I am, the better I am. Mm. So anyway, sure enough, 2 weeks later, I get a bit of a sore elbow. Don't really think much of it. Get on the plane, go to England, and by the time I get there, I can't move my arm barely, and I'm getting these headaches that are just off the charts. And so anyway, getting a tropical disease in London.
Not top of the diagnosis list, is it?
No. Yeah, so, I go to the doctor. The doctor says, there's nothing wrong with you. Look how fit you are. Yeah, a bit of a hypochondriac, this sort of stuff. So I took a week off, couldn't walk because it got into my knee. Like my knees had like arthritic sort of thing, symptoms again. And that went for 3 months and then it disappeared. No problem. Went back to golf again.
Completely disappeared.
No problem. Everything went back to normal.
Wow.
And that was fine. And then I played. I think that was the year I missed my card by £100. And then the last couple of weeks I got like a cold, and it all came back again. And then it hung around for about a month, the arthritis side of it. And then one day I woke up, it was all gone, and I just couldn't think straight. Like just had no. So it was like a chronic fatigue sort of thing. And then that was it. So I couldn't do any. I was just exhausted. So that went on for probably 7 or 8 months. Tried everything,
And did you know during that? Had you been diagnosed in the meantime that it was Ross River?
Well, the original one was Ross River. And then later on, the doctor said, "Oh, listen, you've got." I think he called it yuppie flu or something, which was chronic fatigue, which supposedly was chronic fatigue. So when he said it, I'm thinking, well, I'm not much of a yuppie. I would have called myself a yuppie. Right. But anyway, so I was just flattened me for months and months and months. And over that time, I put on 35 kilos. So I was 80 kilos, I went to 115 kilos. Wow. Tried all sorts of things like vitamin supplements, injections, all sorts of things.
What's causing the weight gain? Is it because you're eating to try and get energy?
Well, in those days, nobody really spoke about, what you were eating or any of that sort of stuff. So I had more spare time for starters. So, and I reckon I craved the sugars in food because it gave me a little hit for
energy,
5-10 minutes. I felt great. And then I'd go back to normal. So I just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I didn't even know, I didn't notice it. But, anyway, so it was quite noticeable, apparently.
You'd think.
So, so like even when I came back, I felt okay, and it was like a general progression. I'd walk one hole one day, 2 holes the next day.
Is there a treatment?
Slowly build up. There's nothing they can do.
So you just got to
just sit it out.
Walk out the other side of it?
So I just sat at home and did nothing for 8-9 months, really, I suppose, and that's when I put on all the weight.
Does it affect you emotionally? Surely there must be, if not depression, you must be close to it at some point. That's horrendous.
Like, depression wasn't a trendy word in those days, so in those days it was toughen up, Nancy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Cup of cement.
That sort of stuff, yeah. So, so I suppose looking back at it, I probably was depressed in some manner, shape or form. Whether that prolonged the rehabilitation, I don't know. But in the end, I slowly came out of it and had the desire to get out there somehow. And, I slowly got fitter and fitter over time. And then my golf still wasn't great. I had a lot of trouble putting and doing things like that. And so I got offered a job at Oatlands. The head professional there, he left and went to New South Wales Golf Clubs and they offered me a job because I was a trainee there and I had a very good relationship with them at the time. So I mentioned it to my father, who went straight down there and took the job for me.
Grabbed your passport on the way out the door and chucked it in the bin.
So anyway, so I was lucky enough I took it. And that went really well. And, in the first year or first probably 6 months, there was a doctor, there was an eye surgeon, ophthalmic surgeon there. And he
Great thing about being a club pro, you've got every doctor imaginable in the membership, haven't you?
Everything, incredible. So he came in one day and said, listen, I don't want to make business for myself, but what you had can really affect your eyes. Everyone says, because I was playing the Wednesday comp with the members and that, everyone says you're the worst player they've ever seen. Maybe it's your eyes. If you want me, I'll have a look at it. So I went in there and he said, yeah, sure enough, your eyes are terrible. Okay. And he sent me to all these experts, like eye exercises and all this sort of stuff. And over a couple of months, they improved a lot, and my golf really came good. I started, shooting good scores, only in the Wednesday comps and that.
Oh, well.
And then as it turned out, I'd somehow, in those days, top 100 kept their card in Australia. Top 60 was exempt. Top 100 maintained your membership to the PGA.
Status, yeah.
So somehow I ended up 99th the year before, and which gave me a chance to pre-qualify. And I asked because I was playing so well in the members comps and that, the members said, why don't you go and try and qualify? So I went down the Australian Open and qualified, and then finished.
Metro? Did you? Westwood win it at Metro?
Kingston Heath it was.
95?
Metro was, no, that would have been...
Metro 97?
that
96
no, it was Kingston Heath. It was Kingston Heath, the first Australian Open that I played, so that would have been 95, I reckon.
Yeah, Norman made headlines complaining about them watering the front of the 17th green, if you remember that. There was a huge stink about it.
Is that right?
Out there with that. Graham Grant and the TV cameras on them and Norman.
Actually, you are right.
You know, it was all soft down. You can't bounce it in here. It's not like the rest of the course.
You got to bounce it in.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
No, yes, you
great
are
stuff.
Right. Yes, so that was the... And then I just kept making cuts, and all of a sudden I've got my card, and, the members got into it so much. When I came back, the committee said, why don't you just do it again?
It's good for the club too, isn't it, to have
it actually
a good player
generated a really good, a lot of interest in the club and, morale and all that sort of stuff. And so off I went, and then I just started playing better and better and better. And then I go back to the club job for 6 or 7 months and then go out, and I somehow maintained to keep doing it. And
it all turns on that tiny little being 99th instead of 101st.
Yes.
Might have been a couple $100.
Yeah, probably that most in those days.
Yeah.
So it was a,
funny thing, life.
Yes, I look back at that moment, and then even the first Australian Open that I played, I was going to miss the cut coming down the last couple on about the 16th hole, and I was right on the cut line. I sort of hooked a second shot, and it was going up against the fence and hit an auto bin and bounced out. And I chipped it up to a foot, tapped it in, par, birdie to make the cut on the mark. I shot 8 under on the weekend, finished top 10. Off we go.
So your career starts. As it turns out, 30 years later.
That's where it all started, yeah.
Your career starts. It's quite amazing.
So, yeah.
The 97, obviously, the Australian Masters was a really special week, and I think we all remember it from watching. It's one of those
incredible,
fantastic stories that guy steps, it's not quite, but the narrative, guy steps out of the club pro shop and wins the Australian Masters with Tiger Woods in the field.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a, all the questions were,
Hell of a thing to be a part of.
what's it like playing for second spot? I remember, I think they asked Allenby that, and he threw the toys out of the kite or something.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a...
he's just another golfer.
Yes, and after playing with him, he wasn't...
he wasn't another golfer?
He wasn't really.
I want to ask you about it, because you did play with him on the Saturday. That's a hell of a thing to do any time, but what was your memory of that? I think a couple of funny things might have happened.
Yeah, over all the years, when I came down to Melbourne, I used to stay with a family that used to put me up, and for years they'd been following me. There was a group of guys, 3 or 4 guys that would come out and follow every game. Whether I was last in the field, first in the field. Well, I was very rarely first in the field, but last in the field, they'd come out and watch me anyway. So Masters, all of a sudden, I'm playing really well, and there was a lot of stories about that tournament, because it was actually the first tournament I took my parents to. Even though I played a lot of tournaments, and they don't like going to tournaments because they don't want to make me nervous and all this sort of stuff.
Hiding behind trees, all that sort of stuff.
That's my mother. Yeah. So anyway,
mother, I think, Pete. To be honest with you.
Yes, probably. Yes. So so that was quite something, and then I put them up at the Como Hotel, which was a pretty ritzy hotel.
Not cheap, that's right.
And my parents were very
down to earth.
Down to earth, and wouldn't waste money. Live well within their means. And what do you think of the Como, Mum? Oh, it's a bit dirty and derelict, isn't it? So what do you mean? She goes, well, there's no furniture, because it was one of those trendy sort of joints. I said, oh yeah. I said, yeah. I said, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. And she goes, oh, and I'd never stayed in a hotel like that, so I didn't know.
You're just pretending.
I had no idea.
That's right.
And she goes, oh yeah, but there's people hanging around there. It just doesn't seem quite right. But anyway, so what had happened was Kiss were in town that week, and Kiss had booked out the top 2 floors, and so it was all just Kiss.
Right.
Like
long hair.
Yeah, long
painted
hair,
faces,
studded belts, and all this sort of rubbish.
Earrings in the nose.
And the other one was Bruce Springsteen was in town as well, so we had another floor or something. So, yeah, so I probably didn't pick the right week to have the Como there. But anyway, so that's fine. So that was good. And then after the first 2 rounds, I shot 8 under. I think the leaders were like 15 or 16 under at the time. And I was the same score as Tiger. And my mates were going, no.
Was that a thing even then? Because you hadn't won the US Masters then, obviously, I don't think. It was before.
No, it was before. He won after. Yeah, it was in February, so it was just before he won it.
It was a big deal. He played the Oz Open the year before, and he was the next big thing, but he wasn't there yet.
Yes, he hadn't quite.
No, but he was still big, so it was a thing.
Yes, he was. Well, he was known to everybody as the next, the big kid coming through, and he's going to be unbelievable and all that sort of stuff. And he used to hit it so much further than everybody else to start with. And
nothing of him either, if I remember back then.
Oh, you skinny kid.
He'd have been 60 kilos if he was lucky.
And he and my friends were going, no, please don't be playing with Tiger. For once in our lives, you're right up on the field, and now we're not going to be able to see anything because you're playing with bloody Tiger. So, there was a big hoo-ha about that. So in those days, you used to have to phone the tournament office Friday night, and hi, it's Peter Lonard here. Can I have my time, please? I'm 8 under par. So, yes, Peter.
Well, you had to tell them.
Yes, so you tell the lady at the thing, and she'd scan the thing, and she, oh yes, Peter, 8 under. That's true. That's right. You're playing at 11:50 or whatever it was, and I said, oh, do you think you could tell me who I'm playing with, please? Oh yes, you're playing with Tiger Woods. I was like, bloody hell. All right, okay, that's fine. I don't know whether playing the Wednesday comp at Oakland's it's really preparing me for this, but okay, no problem. So,
had you seen anything of him before that? Had you seen him on the range or seen him hit shots anywhere?
I hadn't seen him hit any shots. Right. I hadn't seen any. The papers were just covered with him.
But you've played with world-class players.
I played with a few players, but like couples.
You're not going to be blown away by this kid, surely.
Yeah, so I was sort of semi-ready, but he was another level. So anyway, so that's fine. So my first mistake was I let him walk to the first tee first. Right. So off he chuffs, and there's hundreds, thousands of people. The place was just chockers. And they had a little putting green behind the clubhouse, and then they had the first tee. So anyway, so he's at the tee now. I've got to get to the first tee. It was dead set impossible. It's like, excuse me, what? I've got to play with this guy. I'm on the first tee. So finally, we get there. My friends have been complaining all night about we're not going to bloody see a thing. And I walk out on the first tee, and I look backwards, and my one of my closest friends that I'd been staying with forever, he'd probably be 5 foot tall. I don't know how tall, but he's a little shorter. and he was the one complaining the most. And I turned around, and he was a foot higher than everyone. And he'd stopped off at Bunnings on the way to the thing. I don't think it was Bunnings, but one of the hardware store, and he'd bought a step ladder, so he was standing above everybody, all ready to think. So
big grin on his face.
Yeah, big grin on his face. So and off we went. It was an incredible experience. The thing about the Masters was it used to have. It was like the Melbourne Cup.
It was a vibe, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a vibe about it, and they had all walks of life. Like Thursdays, I don't know whether they're Hare Krishnas or whatever, but there'd be a group of them would turn up, and they just watch the golf, which didn't make any sense to anybody, but they were there.
It's the Masters, that's what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was just...
It was an event.
It was an unbelievable event. Sunday was always... There was a bunch of blokes that were probably in their 20s, would sit right on the back of the third green. They'd watch every group come through. They'd drink, and then at the end of the day, they'd try and play cricket on the third green, and they get kicked out. They were there every year. That was part of the tradition. It was always, if you're in the last groups, there was always kerfuffle, and it was always those blokes getting kicked out. Things like that. So off we rocked with Tiger. He was a great bloke.
There's a professional respect, isn't there? I mean,
yes.
He's no better than you in your
That's
arena.
Right. Yes.
You're both pros and you're both trying to win.
Yeah. So I can't remember a lot of it. I do remember about the sixth hole, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6 is a par 5 that runs down the road, and it wasn't that windy that day, and I'd hit my driver, and I think he hit an iron, and we were right next to each other. So his one iron went about as far as my driver, and we were still using the Ballada golf balls. So
is that unusual? You would have played with a lot of guys. You weren't short, were you? Was that a bit of a? Ooh.
Yeah, that was. The only guy that was. There was probably a couple of guys on tour that would be of similar sort of thing. Like one would be Ogle, Norman, maybe, and Lindsay Stevens. Okay. Like he was seriously long in his day with, like, when you're talking about Woods and things like that.
Fantastic temper too. One of the great spitters.
Yes. Well, luckily I never saw that.
I'll tell you a story about him shortly, which you'll really enjoy. Yeah.
So we had like 228 yards to the hole. I remember it, and so I hit my one iron up there to about 10, 15 feet. So very happy with myself.
That's a hell of a shot.
Nice shot up the hill, bounced it up the hill. And he looked at Fluff was caddying for him in those days. That was before he went to Furyk, and Tiger went to Steve Williams, and he said, he gave him exactly the same yards. He said, 5 iron. And I heard Fluff say, "Oh, you don't need to smash it." And I thought, what? Anyway, he hit this 5 iron. Like, honestly, it was like it was going to the moon. And it landed probably just past the flag, bounced all the way off the back. So he flew it probably 230 with the old balls. Uh-huh. And then he chipped it in for eagle, and he's running down and fist pumping that fist pump that he does, and the hairs on the back of your neck was standing up, and I'm thinking, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to putt the next one.
You become a spectator, don't you?
Well, yeah, I was. It was incredible. So, and then the next hole, there was the seventh hole was a par 5 that's just surrounded in tea tree. So it was either fairway or tea tree, and he hit in the tea tree and had a bit of trouble from then. And somehow I got him. I still look back at it. I can't remember the whole day, but the fact that I actually beat him, I can't work out how it happened. It doesn't make any sense, but I managed to, and it was probably a feather in my cap that I never got to feather again.
When you, as a pro, see that, when you're first exposed to that, you that's a little look into the future. Every generation has one, don't they? Jack was that to Bobby Jones, and Snead was that to Hagen. That's the progression. Do you know that you're seeing something there, and then what does it make you think as a pro? Then, well, this is what I'm now playing against for the rest of my career.
I knew that was special at the time. At the time, I was still a club pro. I still really had no. What I decided was, I'm not leaving my club job unless I win, and I hadn't won by then. So, and there were only 2 more for the rest of the year to go. So, as far as I was concerned, I was still a club pro, and I was using a trial set from my pro shop, had price tags on them, which I'd actually forgotten had the price tags on until I played with Freddie Couples at, where was it?
Hope Island,
Hope Island.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What's that on the bottom of your, your name tags?" I said, "No, it's a price tag from my pro shop." He goes, "What do you mean?" So that's so.
Do you reckon Fred Couples has ever paid for it? He probably doesn't know that you pay for golf clubs.
Probably
Not
not.
sure he's ever
Probably
played one
not.
in his life. It's
Probably
possible.
not. I've worked it out the last few years. I always thought you open up your locker every week
There
and
was
there's
just
4 dozen balls in there.
Balls and shoes and all
No,
the rest
they're
of it.
bloody expensive. So, yes, but like that moment was incredible. And we still weren't a good chance of winning the tournament. I don't think the leaders didn't move, but we got, I got 4 shots closer again. I shot 69. So I went 4 under, 4 under, 4 under, 4 under.
Oh, of course, you did too, yeah. Well,
Yeah, so I slowly got near them and then
reeled them in.
And then we got them on the last day. So the last day I really can't remember much. I can remember I was on the 16th green. I made a par, and I remember walking off the green and seeing 2 sumo wrestlers in the full garb, which was something the Masters threw at you every now and then. It was like, but like in the full robes and the hair done up and the thing. If he wasn't 350 pounds, 150 kilos or something.
At a golf tournament.
Yeah, just standing on the back of the green with their arms folded like.
As you would.
And so I remember that. And then the 17th, which the course is way different now, but in the 17th hole used to be a brutal hole. And I hit one down the fairway, and I was thinking, well, if I par the next 2, I'm a chance here. And they're the 2 hardest holes on the course. So there's a possibility you're not going to. And as I walked off the tee, there was a kid, well, not a kid, he's probably 20-odd, and he drunker than 10 men. And he was with a mate and his girlfriend, and he looked at me and he goes, "Don't choke, Lonard." And then he put his hands around his neck and fell to the ground going, like this.
Seriously?
And I remember that. I'll never forget that. At that moment, it was actually good for me because I was like...
To fire you up a
it
bit, wouldn't
really
it?
fired me up. Like,
What the hell's this kid?
I'm not going to choke. So
Wow.
it was probably something I didn't need, but maybe he was hoping it'd hurt me. I don't know, but it worked the other way. I was adamant I'm going to get this in the house and see what happens. And as it turns out, I think Peter O'Malley had he lipped out to beat me by a shot. He hit it left of the green and chipped it and hit the hole. Mm-hmm. And then we had a playoff.
Which is unlucky for Pete. He doesn't miss many putts, Pete.
Or he chipped it.
Oh, cool. Sorry, he lipped out with the chip. No.
Yes, he lipped out with it.
That's unfair, isn't it, actually, on Pete? And most really good ball strikers get this reputation for not being great
Not
putters.
being able to putt.
But
Yes.
in fact, they just hit it so close so often.
Yes, I was discussing that with one of my playing partners today. I was like,
Probably you
like you hit it really well.
that too, don't you? You hit it.
Yeah, I was
you
always
give
known
yourself
as
so many
my
chances.
putting isn't that good, but if you hit a lot of greens,
15 greens.
you're going to hit
15
You're going to hit
looks.
it. If you're seen as though you hit it really close all the time, you're hitting it to 10 feet, and the amount of 10 footers that people hold is negligible.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right.
think they've done all the testing on it.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
Unless you're in 5 foot,
That's right.
it diminishes.
It's exponential.
rapidly.
Yeah, that's right.
So-
10 feet's almost unthinkable.
Yes.
Statistically.
Yes, continuously hold them. You see guys have runs, but over a period of time,
That's what made that Spieth 2015. His
Right.
25-foot make percentage was just crazy. They'd never seen it
incredible.
before. It
Yes.
was just this blip, and of course,
Exactly.
that can't last. And
yes,
and there you go. That was the start of something. But you've been a fantastic international campaigner as an Australian, but you've been a fantastic Australian player. I feel like you're one of those players who Australian golf fans know because you just come back and played. You played and you won here. You were always a contender every summer. I'd write the preview stories for tournaments. Lonard was always one of the names. Lonard is always a chance in Australia. Was there something special about playing here? Do you think, or is it just a comfort zone? Or
I
what do you think about that? Because you've left it. We'll talk about your legacy in a minute. Fantastic legacy in Australian golf.
over a period, I think there was, number one, I always loved playing in Australia. Number two, I think Australian courses suited my game, even more so 10 years ago than they do now. Mm-hmm. I think they were always rock hard, really fast greens. It sort of played to the game that I like to play. I like to bounce the ball. The one thing that I was good at, I think every player, no matter who they are, is good at something. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be good at everything, but there's always something. And most people look at driving the ball, they hit it a long way, they putt great, they chip good. I think all pros that last a long time are probably good chippers or very good chippers. Mm-hmm. My thing was I had very good distance control with the ball. So the bouncier the course got, the better I got, because I could keep it within play without getting into too much trouble.
Land it where you wanted to,
Yes.
which is key.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is really key. And it's a different game to, say, America, who went through a period where they put long rough around all the greens, but the long rough around all the greens just makes the errant tee shot or the errant shot not go far away. Yeah. So as long as you need a flop shot out of the thick grass, that's all it asks you. But in Australia, if you land one pin high 10 yards off the side of the green and it's rock, all of a sudden you've got a 40-yard pitch over shot. Bunker off, bare lie, sand, all that sort of stuff.
Is the least interesting walk in professional golf the 200-yard walk with the 60-degree wedge in hand, because you know the shot you've got before you get there?
Yeah.
That long rough
thing? That long rough. It's very...
At Royal Melbourne, you walk up there with the whole bag, don't you? Because you've got no idea what you're going to face.
Yes, you can't just drive
a hybrid. Could be a...
if you're playing in a buggy, you can't just take one club. You take four or five wedges and off you go. So, yes, it was just a very different game, and I think it was what I grew up on, and I felt really comfortable with it.
The mental part of the game, the ability to pick apart what you need to do on a golf course to play and score well, is a skill in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like, I think you'll find a lot of golf courses as horses for courses. Like, certain courses fit your eyes,
your natural shape.
So the guys that hit it right to left will like, courses that you have to hit it right to left on, left to right, same sort of thing. The good courses are the ones that you have to hit the variety of different shots. There's definitely an art. I think all good players now, they go through it so often in their heads before they play it. In theory, it's pretty straightforward. There's no real shocks to the system. So I always had, like, even when I'd go to bed the night before, I'd still be going through hole by hole. I'm going to hit it there, hit it there, hit it here, hit it there.
Like a 12 marker before the monthly medal.
Same thing. It's exactly the same.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and like even when, like, funny enough, I played with one of the V8 guys the other week, and he was saying, "Oh no, we are only allowed to race the cars practice-wise 4 days a year." So he goes, "I just have a simulator and I just go through the week before, and I just keep going through and just racing the same track
over and over,
which is basically what golfers do in their heads anyway."
Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen when you get out there, of course.
Yes.
As I said, this is coming out around the Australian Open, which I'm going to suggest is a pretty special tournament to you. 2 Australian Opens, 3 PGAs, 2 Australian Masters. That's the triumvirate. You've got the big 3 there of Australian golf, puts you in some pretty elite company. Talk about where the Open fits in there, and talk about the 2 wins that you had, because there's some great stuff in there as well.
As far as the Open's concerned, that's the pinnacle of the Australian tournaments, I think.
Do you still believe that? Do you still feel that way about it? Is it still special to you, even after all these years?
Yeah. I think all the, like, they were all, like, I couldn't say that one was bigger to me than the others.
Sort of like that whole like your kids thing. You can't pick one out and say they're better than the others.
Yeah, I think at the time that I won the first Masters, that was probably the biggest one that I'd won, because just on the amount of people that were there, the amount of players that were there. Excuse me, like even the last round of that, I played with Mike Weir, who turned out to be
2
incredible
Masters in 2 days. That's not bad.
So, when I look back at that, all those 3 tournaments were the tournaments that we all wanted to win. They were always together. So, maybe I was cheating a little bit, because if you get on a roll, you
can do an Allenby.
You can do 3 in a row. Yeah. Realistically, I think if you're ever going to do it, when they're 3 in a row, that's the chance to do it. But I never really played amateur golf, so I never really became part of the amateur body. So to me, they were all very similar. The Australian Open, the first one was at Moona Links.
It's a different sort of a course and venue for an Australian Open, isn't it?
Very different. It was probably the first Australian Open where it wasn't like the Masters, if that makes sense, as far as a sandbelt course right in the heart of Melbourne, people everywhere, or even the Australian Open. I think probably the first tournament that I played I think the first Australian Open I played was at the Australian. And from that day on, I was like, wow, this is
big.
This is big. This is quite something, coming down the last hole. I always remember, it must have been like 91, 92 maybe. I think I was in front of Norman because Norman had the albatross. So I was on the next tee and watched that go in. And I reckon Vijay Singh was in front of me. So he was. Okay. So we were squeezed in amongst the two legends.
It's quite the sandwich, isn't it? To be
that was quite the sandwich. So, but that's when I thought, this is incredible.
That crowd must have been amazing when he holed that shot.
It was unbelievable because it was like nobody in the field could barely reach that. I'd take, like I said, probably Lindsay if he was hitting at his best. Ogle probably, but everybody was waiting for him to hit his second shot. And we were on the tee waiting to hit off, and I still remember sort of just bounced onto the front edge of the green. And
were you watching?
We were.
You turned around and you were
watching the thing come up. Couldn't help it.
What a front row seat you've had.
So we were above everybody.
Yeah.
The green had 3 tiers. I think it was on the second tier. And just to get on the green was an incredible shot. Got it on the green. Everybody starts roaring, and then it gets up and goes up the tier and roaring louder. And then all of a sudden it just went bang in. And the roar was it was incredible. It was like Tiger-esque later on in 97, but it was, yes, I'll never forget that shot.
The ball on the ground is the great thing about golf. That's when the real magic happens, don't you think?
Yes.
That when it's hit the ground and it's rolling that 10 seconds is it, will it, won't it, can it get there? Is it going to turn? Is it going to catch the lip? It's an amazing...
Exactly. It's incredible
stuff.
Yes. Once again, it was like one of those moments. It was like, I think in those days I'd actually never been on TV before, maybe once or something. And I still remember getting to the last hole, and I could hit it on this... it's a par 5, so I could hit on the last two with I think I had a 4-iron, and I waited and waited and waited for Vijay. They putted out, off they went, and anyway I hit this 4-iron to about 6 inches, I suppose, and tapped it in from eagle. I think I went 2 under those first 2 days, and I thought that's going to be on TV. Surely I'm in front of Norman, blah blah blah. So anyway, my mum had. Videoed it. In those days we had the VCRs, and so I get home. I said, I reckon I've got a shot on TV. So we go all the way to the end, and they had me standing up there waiting, and then they get me standing over the ball. I take a waggle, and then they went to the news. So I didn't see any of it.
Timing was all. You got to see
I thought
it.
I thought that was going to be my only claim to fame, but anyway.
Your big chance.
Yeah.
How do you deal with all that because all of that, of course, grew for you. You became you still are. You're quite the star in Australia in terms of high-profile golfers. Every time you come back to Australia to play, you do the press conferences, and people want to interview magazines, they want to do swing sequences, all that other stuff that's got nothing to do with playing the game. How'd you cope with all of that? You've always been incredibly generous with the press. Is that just not all?
It was fine. I wasn't really. I didn't have a lot of requests, but I
reckon I've been pestering you for the best part of 20 years for interviews and.
Yeah, but
phone chats.
It's not that hard. It never takes that long, does it? So, but I'm not quite at that. I was never quite at that level, like a Adam Scott or a Norman or any of those. So,
do you enjoy that side of it? I feel like a lot of players don't. But do you enjoy chatting?
I just treat whoever the way they treat me. If they get a bit aggressive with their questions, I probably don't like it. But I'm just the way I am, so if you like it, great. I'm pretty diplomatic, so I don't usually get in. I'm probably the journo's worst nightmare because I don't get myself into too much, kerfuffle. But you don't hide your opinions either, do you? No, I think you're reasonably fair both ways, but I'm not overly emotive about bits and pieces. It can be an issue, can't it? I mean, I remember talking to Jeff Ogley about this after he won the US Open, which is obviously, that's a big deal to win a major, but there's probably an element of this too. He said as soon as he won the US Open, it was amazing. Suddenly he was right about everything, apparently. Yes, well, everything. I remember Hensby got in all sorts of kerfuffle about the shark. And later on, I don't know whether I can say it the way he said it, but he's I think I'm aware of it. He said, he sort of said, well, no one cared what I thought up until all of a sudden I win a golf tournament, all of a sudden what I say matters.
That's
Nobody's
right.
taken any notice of me before, so why does it make me any smarter now?
Yeah.
So just leave me alone, Wiz. So, yes.
It's funny that, and we see this in football and other sports, is that you take young blokes, make them think they're more important than they are. It can be hard to keep your feet on the ground.
Yes, there's a few over the years that have gotten a little bit big for their boots and that. I think golf's I think it's hard to get too big for your boots in golf.
Yeah,
I think
it'll generally whack you pretty
it'll
quick,
whack you
won't it?
sooner or later. Throughout my whole career, at any time that I've thought, I got this, I'm going to really go to the next level, I often get belted
right.
the next day or something. But the one I remember is Augusta. So I went to Augusta probably 5 times, 6 times, maybe something, I can't remember. And I could never. It was one of those courses that you're always putting over tiers. It was one thing that I hated doing. I was no good at.
Up and then down.
Yes, anything. The first 2 days in particular, pins are always up on the tops of the hills. So unless you hit it in a perfect position, the ball would roll off the hill and you'd have a 20, 30 footer, 40 footer up over a tier, stopping it just on top of the tier. And I never really, I just wasn't good at it. I practiced it. When I got into Augusta, I was trying to work out ways to do it. When I practice rounds, I'd do a lot of practice of it, but I just wasn't very good at it. And the last one, I actually snuck in. I had no reason to be at Augusta, and then all of a sudden I finished second at New Orleans, which was like 2 weeks before it was the cut-off for the top 50 in the world, and all of a sudden I was 49th in the world. You're in Augusta again. So anyways, so I thought, every year I'd go home and I think, I just can't believe I can't shoot a score around there. So the first round, 69, should have shot 63, 64, played great. It all went the way I thought. And then that night I'm thinking, I've got it. I've got this
Finally,
joint. I've worked it out. I'm finally going to have a fun week at Augusta and have a lot of fun. And then I shot 80 and missed a cut. So it was an absolute nightmare. But, that's
Do you like the
the way
course?
golf is. I thought it was probably a bit long for me by the time.
They're all carry golf courses. You've got to carry the ball a long way.
There's no bouncing it. No. And I always thought it was going to be a little different to that. The other thing that I found very difficult with there was you never get a flat lie. You're always playing angles and things. And, it definitely took a few years to actually see things that other players could see. So the first tournament I played there, I thought, oh, well, it'll be good. I'll play with a couple of no names and we can get around, see how we go, and
Won't be too hard.
Be pretty easy. Anyway, it rained non-stop the first 3 days before the tournament, so that I don't even think they let spectators on for a couple of the days. I played 9 holes one day, 9 holes the next day, and next thing I'm pegging it up with Phil Mickelson and David Toms. I was like,
Welcome
what are you
to
killing me?
Augusta National.
Yeah, so
What was he like, Phil?
I found him really good. I'd never had a problem with him. I always thought he was really nice. He was actually, and I think this is where, to Australians, maybe he comes across where they're not so sure, is because he's actually so nice. Australians,
But you can't believe it. You've got to be suspicious.
Australians are going, oh,
hang on a minute.
is he serious or is he having a laugh? So, but, you got to take him as
Yeah, of course.
the time you've spent with him. And on the 9th hole, I always remember that day I was having truckloads at the start. I got off to not a very enjoyable start. And on the 9th hole, it's like a 3-tier green, and it sits a little bit funny to you, and the pin was up in the back left, and I was over in the right in the middle where you're supposed to hit it, and he was right next to me, and I was my putt, so I walked all the way back, hit my putt up to about 4 feet. Anyway, he stands over his putt, and I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, where's he aiming? So anyway, of the 30 paces that I did to go and look at my putt, I reckon 25 of them were straight down the middle of his line. And, and so anyway, so he putted totally different line, came up off the back edge and rolled all the way backwards down next to the hole to about an inch or so. And I said, oh, listen, sorry about that. And he said, oh, it's fine. He said, unless you played here 20 times, you would never really even thought that was a line. And I said, you're not wrong there. So anyway, so we walk on up, and then he says, oh, you're playing here full time now? And I said, oh, yeah, I've been over here for a couple of years now, blah, blah. He said, well, we just love it when you guys come here and play. I just think it's wonderful like that. And at that moment, I was on the tee and I'm thinking, is he taking the piss out of me or is he actually serious? But yeah, I thought he was lovely. But I think he's so nice. The Australians aren't used to so nice. Don't get me wrong. I think he's got an edge, and all good players have that edge when it comes to push and shove.
I don't think he even tries to hide it. He's quite open about the hard time he gives some of the younger players and the betting and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, he's an interesting one, isn't he? Yeah. What's it like living in that? When you turn up at Augusta and it's your first time and they pick you up with Phil and all that, and you're having thousands the first 8 holes. What's that like? Because I know
it's very uncomfortable. It's not good. Not good. Not much.
Because amateurs, when we play with pros, we feel like we're in the way. It's like, oh shit, this guy's he can plumb. I'm just in the way. And you rush to try and get out of the way because I'm sure it's not like that for pros. But is there a bit of that? Do you feel?
Not so much.
Are you just locked into?
Not so much get out of the way of things like by the time I'd gotten there, I'd played in America for long enough, and like every tournament's like, they have 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 people coming out over the week. So you're quite used to the spectators and the crowds.
The other thing us amateurs are terrified of, the notion of somebody watching you play golf.
Yes, well, that adds tenfold, doesn't it? So, but Augusta, the fact that it was Augusta, I wanted to do well. But playing poorly, I must, like over my whole career, I was actually quite lucky where I really didn't have many disasters when it really mattered. As far as disasters would be Augusta, the first couple of rounds, I never really quite got going in the right direction. So that was about as embarrassing as I could feel. Because
the Spieth moment in 2016 when you hit it in the water there on 12, and then hit it in the water again. We all know it. You just want the earth to open up and swallow you.
And then you've got to drop it and chip it. And
now you've got to keep playing.
And that's even worse. And keep going. And so it's like the club championship of the average Joe Blow. All of a sudden, every shot counts. It's it
changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes, a little uncomfortable.
A long way from the range to the first tee, isn't there?
You just want to get it over with and get out of there.
You do. Let's go back to the Australian Open. The second Australian Open, I think, is the one I probably remember more at the Australian. I seem to recall the last day you hit it in a not great spot on the 18th hole, up on the left on the hill there.
Yeah.
What do you remember about?
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a safe shot. It certainly was the safe line, wasn't it?
Well, it was one of those ones where, all week, I think I won the New South Wales Open the week before at Liverpool. I played pretty well. I came down the last with Summers. Anthony Summers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he mucked up the last, and so I got away with it. So yeah, so yeah, I don't know how you say it, but so I made a par, he made a bogey. So
such a nice bloke. I don't know how you could have done that to him. Nicest bloke in the world. It's one of the worst things you've ever done.
There probably was one of the worst things I've ever done, but sometimes they just fall in your lap and you can't help it. But we'd been neck and neck the whole day, so he would have felt pretty ordinary at the end of the day, I'd say. I was actually playing really well. I'd actually just started to see. I'd been seeing Ledbetter for probably 5 or 6 months, and it was okay. But there was something that week at the New South Wales Open where all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, okay, this."
You found it.
I found
that magical moment.
It was different, and so the New South Wales Open was big. The Australian Open, I turned up and I played tee to green really well, but didn't putt very well. So it wasn't until the last day. Last 9 holes, all of a sudden I hold a couple of putts and I thought nobody was really moving and I wasn't really making bogeys because I was hitting lots of greens, and so I got to the par 5 about 14. Knocked it in the bunker there for 2, got it up and down for birdie. I can't remember the scores exactly. Then the next par 3 I hit it on to about 15 feet, and I thought if I can hold this, I'm right there. So anyway, I hold that. So that was good. 16's one of the hardest holes on course.
Awkward, isn't it?
Really awkward hole.
72 awkward holes.
Yes, exactly. So I hit a great 4-iron onto that green and 2 putted for par. The 17th hole, now I'm sort of tied for the lead, I think. I'm maybe one ahead even. And the 17th hole, I like hitting a drive. In those days I used to like hitting a punch driver and go almost along the ground, roll down the hill, down next to the water there. And there's a little tree that stuck out on the left. I used to aim at that and cut it off it. So anyway, so I aimed at that. I went bang, didn't move, just went dead straight out and hit it. So anyway, I came back. I hit a 4-iron to the right of the green.
4-iron.
Like not what I was expecting.
No. There's out of your comfort zone.
And I was over the back on the right edge, and the pin was in the back left corner, and I chipped it in. All of a sudden, I'm 2 ahead. So I'm going, what the hell happened? How this, like it all just fell into place. So I hold a few putts and, then I chipped this thing in. It just went in perfect pace, just dribbled straight in the back, in the front of the hole. And then, so 18, I get up on 18. I'm thinking I'll just 3-shot it down there, make my par, and it's done. There's, the other guys have 16, 17 to go and 18. So they'll probably make birdie, but they're not going to, unlikely for them to make eagle. They can.
Yeah.
So
they're going to need to come and get me.
Yeah, they've got to come and get me. So anyway, so I just ripped this driver down there. I get down there and I've got 212 yards to the hole, and I'm going, I can't lay this up. It was like one of the looking back at it was just the dumbest moment of my life, I think. But definitely not my life, but one of the sillier moments of my life. So I'm standing there. So I've got to hit 90 yards short of the water, and then hit 120 or whatever it is, or 110, or I knock it on. I'm thinking, well, I'm playing great. I can't just knock it on the green, stop being a wuss. So,
what sort of club are you looking at for 212 yards? 4, I think we're talking.
It was in those days it was a 4-iron.
4-iron, yeah.
But there was a little puff of wind, not a lot, but
you don't want to be short.
You don't want to be short.
Short.
So all of a sudden, I thought, well, I think I had a 2-iron in, or a 3-iron or something. And I thought, I'll go a club extra and, make sure of it. So anyway, so we had to wait for a while, and then I stood over, and just as I was about to hit, I said, well, don't hit it right. And I let this thing go. I went so far up that hill up the left. It was like a no man. It was like,
it could have actually been a disaster.
I had disaster written all over.
There could have been. You could have easily taken 4 from up there.
So
without hitting a particularly bad shot on any of them.
Yes. So I got up there. I managed to get it on the edge of the green, and then I 3-whacked it to make bogey, and then no one caught me. So I got lucky there. It was there was a funny moment there when I the next day or that night when I come home. I live in an apartment building. I get in the lift. There's a lady in the lift. I've got my golf clubs, and she said, "Oh, yeah, you're a golfer, eh?" I said, "Yeah, I play a bit of golf." She says, "Are you any good?" And I said, "Oh, I'm okay." So we had a bit of a talk about golf and where she's a member and all this sort of stuff. So no problem. And then the next morning I wake up and I go downstairs, and there's the concierge is there, and he said, "Oh, listen," he said, "the lady in number such and such left this for you." I said, "All right." So anyway, so it was a letter saying, "Oh, I apologise for not recognise you in the thingo, blah, blah, blah. Funny enough, I actually watched you play yesterday, and on the back page of the paper there was a picture of me hitting off that hill, and she was standing right next to me." So none of us looked the same without our hats on. But yeah, so I look back at that one, I was lucky, but if I had closed it out a bit different.
It's funny that I interviewed Bob and Kathy Shearer together. I don't know, well, you know Kathy, but that was a bit of sport. I can tell you this was a couple of months ago. And he talked about the 82 Australian Open that he won.
Yep.
And he had a similar sort of thing. I think he played with Nicholas obviously the last day, and Nicholas hit a 1-iron onto the green from 5 yards behind him. And he said the caddy and the marshal, he had the marshal telling him to lay up. He's like, hey. But he talked about that sort of strange. He said, you can't lay it up there. He couldn't take a wedge and hit it 90 yards. You couldn't do it. Yes. You had to take the 3-iron and rip it onto the green. And if you missed it, miss it left. But that would have been a harder shot to try and hit a wedge 90 yards than to try and hit a 3-iron 200 yards at the time. It's a funny thing. I got
sucked into it. Like the whole way down, it was going to be a 3-shotter. And then when I did the numbers, I was like...
So what you should have done was hit 1-iron or 3 it off the tee.
So you can't do it.
There's just not a choice.
That's exactly right.
Because it's choices that kill you in golf, isn't it? It's the decision making.
Yeah, the bad decision can really kill you. But I was actually into I was into the normal nor'easter. So I actually think there was a part of me thinking, well, I can't reach it anyway. So, but as it turns out, once I got down there, it was it all where it got a good bounce, nice bounce, and all this sort of stuff. So, but. Yes, we actually, the Australian Golf Club, we've been lucky enough to be all made honorary members because we won the Australian Open there, and I had the pleasure of being at their. They did a bit of a dinner and speak, like a night, and where they gave Bob his membership.
Oh,
and
fantastic!
They had myself, Craig Parry, and Bob up there, and it was unbelievable to hear Bob talking about his Australian Open at the Australian. It was just incredible. It was a really good night.
Yeah, it's a course that he didn't like. Kathy didn't come to Sydney.
He didn't say that.
No, he did, and he didn't.
He did. She didn't come to Sydney. That's right.
That's
so
right.
He didn't say that
because he told her I'll be home Friday night. So I've never played well. Yeah, I never have. The clubhouse had burnt down 5 weeks before, and
so it was
really?
All it was all that. I remember the clubhouse burning down.
Nicholas was there, and he got paired with Nicholas, so he had to, man up and be a pro and play properly. And he suddenly found himself. He was there and thereabouts at the end, and there you go. He ended up winning it. And Kath missed it because she was out in the garden. She was out doing some gardening, which she hates doing, but she couldn't stand watching it on TV.
It was making her too nervous.
Yes, you now play the Australian quite regularly, say?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do those memories come flooding back from?
Yeah, there's actually.
Of course, it's changed a bit. I know it
has changed a little bit, but there's something about the Australian that, and although
it's a big golf course, it's a big event golf course.
Yes, the bigger the event, the better it comes out.
Yeah,
it's got an unbelievable feel about the course, the amphitheatre, and
there's space, and it's a fantastic tournament venue.
Yes, so funny enough, like when I say I didn't play any amateur golf, I did play a couple of schoolboys events near the end, and one of the qualifyings was to play at the Australian. So I that was the first time I ever saw the Australian, was probably when I was 14 or 15, and I still remember walking on the first tee. I'm thinking, is this a putting green or is this a tee? I've never seen anything like I'd never seen anything like it.
Can't take a divot here.
Yeah, like I'm out at Oatlands or Ryde Parramatta where it's all kaikiu, and this thing's just the purest bent you've ever seen. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable joint. So I've always had incredible memories about it, whether it be the schoolboys event, and I would have shot 100. I don't know what I shot, 80s, whatever. But then the first Australian Open I ever played there, that was the first tournament that I played where it was like, wow, this is big time.
This is what tournament golf is.
Yeah, this is what
it's about.
This is what you read about in America and majors and all this sort of stuff. So to actually win one there was quite special.
Yeah, fantastic. There's a couple of things I want to ask you about to finish up, because I've taken more of your time than I meant to.
You're fine.
You've got a fantastic story about when you lived in London and Pete Senior came to stay with you.
Yeah.
Anybody who's heard it will enjoy hearing it again, and anybody who hasn't will enjoy hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, well, Peter used to. I'm going to throw him under the bus here. So he was very good at. Every year we have these yearly, what would you call them, commitments with the tour, where you've got to go to meetings and compulsory meetings. So everybody's got to go. So Peter used to. He'd sort of left Europe and he'd come back to play a few here and there, and so he stayed with me in England. I had a place in a village called Sunning Hill, and he was very good at getting into these meetings and getting out. And I'd never seen him in action before, but this day, you sign in because they know we're all hopeless at going to meetings, so you sign in, and then I watched him go and say hello to all the head honchos, Schofield, and all these blokes. Hello, and then I'm watching him. I'm thinking, where's he going? And the next thing, he's gone. Right out the side door, he's out of there. I'm stuck in this meeting for an hour and a half. So anyway, it was gold. It was like
he's been seen. That's all.
He's been seen. Yes. So someone's going to say,
seen him,
"Oh, Senior wasn't there" or something. They go, "Oh, I spoke to him. I shook his hand.
Shook my hand. That's right."
So he's good. He's as good as being there, right? So I'm thinking, you bastard! I can't believe you just did that. How did? So that was an old. To me, that was an old timer move on how to do it. So
veteran trick.
Anyway, so finally I come home. Hour and a half, 2 hours later. I want to kill myself. Been talking about. The food in the players' locker rooms and all this rubbish that has nothing to do with us anyway. And I lived in it was like a terrace house, and it was like there was probably a block of 6 of them all lined up. And I was quite good friends with my neighbour, so I parked my car and I get out, and at that time my neighbour's father was staying with him, and he's out gardening or doing something in the front yard. And, "G'day, John, how are you?" "Yeah, I'm good, Peter. How are you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good." He said, "Just met your father." I said, "Oh, what?" He said, "Your father." I was talking to him earlier. What a lovely chap. I said, my father. He goes, yeah, it's your father. I said, you sure? He goes, yes, no doubt. The similarities, you are the spitting image of each other. It's incredible. Are you sure it was my father? He goes, yes. I said, hello, my name's John. He said, hi, I'm Peter Senior. So I was like, no, that's his name, Peter Senior. He's not Peter Senior. So
has he ever lived that down with you? Or have you
no, I was like,
since?
Well, I was dirty because they said I was a spitting image of him, and he was dirty because they thought he could be my father. So we were both not very impressed with it.
I can imagine. Peter, there's a million things I'd love to sit here and chat with you some more, but I've taken, as I said, more of your time. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, you used to be into cars. You still into cars? What is it with golfers and cars? Richard Green, Wade Ormsby, you?
Yeah,
or is it just blokes?
Just blokes in general, I think.
It's not golfers, it's blokes.
You know, I enjoyed the... I like the touring cars. And,
you ran in a Monaro there for a while.
Well, I always had... funny enough, I had I had this hotted up Holden HDT or whatever they call it, and then I finally decided I don't need it anymore, so I get rid of it. And then a week later, I won.
Had a hole in one, didn't you?
I had a hole in one here at the Lakes and won a SS Commodore, and so I've just had that thing forever where I've loved cars. Probably that's the only thing I've really wasted money on. Mm-hmm. The one thing I did say, if I get my tour card, I'm going to buy myself an Aston Martin, and so I did that in America.
Did you?
Yes, and blew it up the first day I had it. It was an absolute disaster. So I ended up getting rid of it, but it was an absolute nightmare. So I'll just stick to the standard V8s.
It's like they say about boats, don't they? There's 2 great days to owning a boat: the day you get it and the day you sell it.
That's right. And
everything else in between is just a nightmare that you could have lived without.
That was definitely the Aston Martin experience. But yes, no, I've been very lucky.
Mate, on behalf of everybody who's listened and hopefully listened all the way through, it's been fantastic to catch up. You've always been gracious with your time, and we really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Best of luck in the future too.
Thanks, mate.
Well, if you've made it this far, congratulations and thank you for sitting through all that. I know it was a long discussion, but to be honest, I feel like we could have gone on for double that length of time and still had things to talk about. I can't thank Peter enough for being so generous with his time, and I think we all wish him the best, both over the upcoming Australian summer and in his over 50s career. Now, speaking of the Australian Summer of Golf, it will of course be highlighted in 2019 by the staging of the President's Cup at Royal Melbourne. This is the 3rd time Australia's most revered layout has played host to the tournament, and while the players are front and centre over the course of the competition, the scrutiny on Royal Melbourne's composite course is intense. So what's it like to be tasked with making sure the venue's up to snuff of such a major spectacle? Tune in next month to find out when we meet Royal Melbourne Course Superintendent Richard Forsyth.